So Theros has been out for roughly a month now. The dust has settled, and if you're a Commander player like me, you've probably been picking over the new cards to see what you can get into your decks. Now everyone has been talking about the big new cards like Heliod as a life gain payoff, Nyx Bloom Agent as an amazing ramp piece, and Underworld Breach as the new Yogg's Will. But outside the splashy mythics, there are plenty of more common cards that you should still be paying attention for in regards to Commander. So today I want to shed some light on 5 of the best uncommons from the set that you might see in your game soon. Number 5. Did you notice Underworld Dreams was reprinted in this set? Unlike the other cards on this list, this is a reprint of a much older card that we haven't seen since M10. Black, black, black for an enchantment and reading whenever an opponent draws a card, Underworld Dreams deals 1 damage to that player. While it's no powerhouse by itself, it fits nicely into any group slug deck such as Nekazar or Mogus. The fact that this card was several dollars prior to Theros Beyond Death and is now only cents to pick up, it means you should really be prepared to see it around your tables more, and maybe even slot it into one of your decks. Number 4. Everyone knows how strong Song of the Dryad or Imprisoned in the Moon is in Commander, taking Commander out of play without allowing them to return to the command zone. Well, now we have a new budget white version in Heliod's Punishment. 1 and a white for an aura that reads, Enchant creature, Heliod's Punishment enters the battlefield with 4 task counters on it. Enchanted creature cannot attack or block and loses all abilities. Enchanted creature has tap, remove a task counter from Heliod's Punishment. Then, if there are no task counters on it, destroy Heliod's Punishment. What a mouthful. While their commander does stay as a creature, it won't be blocking or attacking and loses all its abilities, with the downside that the commander will escape after 4 turns. In Commander though, 4 turns without your key piece is an eternity. And anyway, expensive cards like Song of the Dryads rarely get to put the commander out of action for very long anyway. 4 turns really doesn't matter. Unlike the other budget alternatives we have recently, I'm looking at you, Kenrith's Transformation, the fact that they cannot attack or block with their commander to get rid of them makes this a superior card. So if you're putting together that budget list and want a way to deal with commanders, take a look at Heliod's Punishment. Number 3. Coming in at number 3 is Red's newest Impulse Draw enchantment, Furious Rise. For 2 and a red, it's an enchantment that reads, at the beginning of your end step, if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, exile the top card of your library. You may play this card until you exile another card with Furious Rise. Red has a long history of bad draw in Commander, but over the last few years with cards that exile the top of the library, Red has been getting pseudo draw. Now Furious Rise isn't for every deck, you need creatures with power 4 or greater to make it work. So having a commander that meets this requirement makes this card a lot more playable, but it also has other upsides. There are less time restrictions for the exiled card, you can play it until Rise exiles its next card, and if your big creature gets destroyed, you can continue to play that card. It doesn't go away at the end of turn, and notice it says play, not cast, so this even lets you get your lands drops off the cards it exiles. Next up, if Rise is destroyed, you can still play the last card that got exiled with it. So even if your opponent sees something scary off the top of your library, getting rid of Rise is not going to stop you from casting it. And lastly, it exiles at the beginning of your end step. To me this is huge, it means you can play out the enchantment and get value from it immediately, you don't have to wait until your next turn. So if you're looking for that next red draw effect, especially if you're on a budget, you should definitely have a look at this interesting card. Number 2, and now we have a more specialized card, but it's sure a good one for the decks that want it. Hydra's Growth is a new aura for 2 and a green that reads, Enchant creature. When Hydra's Growth enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on enchanted creature. At the beginning of your upkeep, double the number of +1/+1 counters on enchanted creature. Now this isn't going to be a good card in most green decks, but in those that care about counters, this will be a powerhouse if it can't be removed. Even getting 1 upkeep with growth attached to a creature or commander may rocket you into the lead. So where might this be good? Peer and Toothy you'll love it, doubling your counters on Toothy, or any other counter-based creatures. Hydra Tribal will appreciate the help, and Gave Guru Spores can never have enough counters. If you've got a commander that excels with counters, you can't miss running Hydra's Growth. Number 1. There sure have been a lot of enchantments on this list, but fear not, because our number 1 pick is Soul Guide Lantern. Out of all the uncommons in the set, this one has certainly raised a few eyebrows. As it should, because it's a new take on an old commander favourite. Soul Guide Lantern is a 1-mana artifact that reads, when Soul Guide Lantern enters the battlefield, exile target card from a graveyard. It then has 2 abilities, tap and sacrifice the lantern to exile each opponent's graveyard, or 1 mana tap and sacrifice the lantern to draw a card. If these abilities sound familiar, it may be because you've used Relic of Progenesis, which is a very similar artifact that is a staple piece of graveyard removal in Commander. However, I feel Lantern has one very big advantage over Relic. It only exiles your opponent's graveyards and therefore doesn't exile your stuff or itself. And just like Relic, if you end up in a game where it's not actually very useful for you, you can basically cycle it for 2 mana. But for any graveyard decks looking to run graveyard removal, you've just been handed a Relic of Progenitus that doesn't screw over your own game plan. In decks like Muldrotha, who can recur the Lantern, this suddenly becomes an amazing control piece that can double as bad card draw. If you've already got a deck that runs Relic and doesn't care about its graveyard, you may want to stick with Relic, since it can stay on the board and slowly chip away at graveyards. But if you've been looking for some new anti-graveyard tech, you need to get a hold of Soul Guide Lantern and try it out. You might just be surprised. And that's it, 5 Commander uncommons from Theros Beyond Death that you might have missed. Let me know if you've seen some uncommons from the set that do work in your games, and I'm sure there are lots of corner case cards from this set that will be great in certain decks. With that, thanks for watching and good night.